Oh, hello and welcome here to the Daily Quest episode number 21. I'm Solid Jake, and today we're talking about Tyrande. Now, first off, I'm going to rant. I'm going to rant before we even get into this. I spent several hours this morning with a very clear idea of exactly what I want to show in this episode. I have three builds lined up that I'm going to teach you guys about Tyrande. Now, she's a super diverse hero. We're going to get to that. But I actually had specific examples. Now, K1 Pro, he runs this really unique style for Tyrande. He's been doing it in Gold League. And there's this other new, very supporty style of Tyrande. And I've seen these builds busted out in tournaments, and I've reached out to like everyone. I'm like, I need these replay files. I can find the videos, I can find the tournament VODs, but the replay files like don't exist. So my gripe, my rant is, as a community, now that replay files do not break, we need to really learn to respect and cherish those replay files as like history and documentation of Heroes of the Storm, because as the game evolves and gets patched and stuff, I mean, it's always cool to be able to look back and look at these styles and look at the people that innovate these kind of builds. So that's my rant, because I don't know, the better access to replays we have, the better content we can create. But with that being said, the topic today is Tyrande. Now, Tyrande is a very interesting support in Heroes of the Storm. She's actually my first love with Heroes. I played her at BlizzCon when they first unveiled Heroes. And, you know, I'm a guy that has no MOBA background, but I always played ranged heroes in World of Warcraft, MMOs in general. I always played the archer type heroes. But I found the idea of playing a support and a ranger at the same time quite interesting. And she's been through, quite a few changes since the game has come out. But, now she really feels like she can fulfill, like, to be a ranger, to be a support, or to be kind of something in between, or even a little bit more of a utility assassin or a support, or however you want to look at her. She's got such a diverse kit. And that's exactly what we're going to look at today, the three different styles that really define how you can play Tyrande in Heroes of the Storm. Now, before we get into the actual builds, let's just take a look at the hero and explain to you, if you're new to the game, you might not know a lot about Tyrande, but she's a really cheap hero. I mean, well, no, she's not that cheap. 7,000 gold isn't that cheap, but she's definitely one of the heroes you should look to get pretty early in the game. She's got a bit of a skill cap, but she's definitely got such an impactful list of abilities here. Now, Light of a Loon is... it's a heal, of course. Not the biggest heal in the game. It's an 8-second cooldown, which isn't that long. But the interesting thing is when you heal a target, you heal yourself. So effectively, you should never cast this on yourself because it doesn't do the bonus heal. A lot of people may mistake this. They think that if they cast it on themselves, they'll get that 310 heal, but that's not true. That's only when you cast it on an ally. Now, this could be a minion. This could be an allied hero. But casting on yourself will only give you that 155, so it's always more beneficial if there's no one near you and you need to heal yourself to heal a minion. So that's just a little small tip for Tyrande. Sentinel, obviously, it's good for dealing damage, but it's also a great scouting tool. Just use this to get vision of mercenary camps. If you think they might be taking the bruisers, you think they might be rotating, shoot the Sentinel out. Great ability for that utility. Lunar Flare, obviously, long-range stun. One of the best stuns in the game, considering that it's long range. And then her heroics, she has Starfall. It's good zone control. The damage isn't huge. It's really more about controlling a huge space. 8 seconds of a 20% slow AoE. It is really, really strong. You pair that with other abilities. Say you have a Vala on your team, and Vala wants to use Strafe paired with this. It's a lot harder for them to get away or move around in general when Starfall is active. And it's also great for pressuring over the wall when you're attacking the enemy team's keeps or forts. In those kind of situations, you throw Starfall in there, and you can be a little bit more aggressive in those scenarios. Shadowstalk, however, has become much more popular ever since the change. It's a big global heal, the only global heal in the game. It will cloak your entire team for up to 8 seconds. Obviously, you can break the cloak. And at the conclusion, you get the heal as well. This has just become enormously popular. There's a lot of cool attacks you can do with this. You can try to surprise the enemy by using Shadowstalk and go in for the battle mid-battle to help your allies escape if they're in a bad spot. This could be, the difference between life and death between the heal and the stealth. So there's a lot of cool implications that Shadowstalk brings to the table. And then Hunter's Mark. Obviously, this is just really powerful trait. honestly, in a lot of ways, it could be the strongest trait in the game because it's 25% damage amplification for 4 seconds. And when it's a 20-second cooldown, that might seem like a long time, but there are talents that change this, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Now, overall, when you're playing Tyrande, she isn't necessarily the best solo support in the game. But ever since the recent changes, they've made that a viability for her. And this is good for everyone across the board, right? This is good for someone that wants to just solo queue as Tyrande in quick match, and they just want to say, hey, I just want to be Tyrande. And in the past, if you were to do this, you would actually be hurting your team a bit because Tyrande solo support would just be so weak, and the quick match would just read you as like, okay, you're the support player, good luck. And then you'd have like this huge heal decline because she didn't really feel like that. But since the Shadowstalk change and a few other changes, it's evolved. But they've actually, some of the players have figured out a new style that we're going to talk about that really makes her feel like a phenomenal support, especially once you hit level 13. So let's look at a few builds that are really possible with Tyrande in Heroes of the Storm. So the first build we have here on the left, I labeled it the stun rotation build, but that's kind of, it doesn't really deserve that title. It's probably the most common title or the most common build for Tyrande in the game, but it does really excel at getting these stuns. So when it comes to just playing Tyrande in this way, in general, level 1, you're just going for Ranger's Mark. Now, this is 8 seconds off that 20-second long cooldown on her trait, Hunter's Mark. That means every 12 seconds you can mark a target, and that's really good. 4 seconds of 25% damage amplification, then 8 seconds cooldown, and then you can do it again. It's like so incredibly impactful, and it doesn't cost you anything at all to use it, really. I mean, there's no mana cost on it. It's just got the cooldown on it, and it's going to really help you pick up those kills. Now, level 4, generally with this standard build, this is if you're playing the really utility Tyrande, often paired with something like, if you really are trying to go lone support, she can do it, but you often see something like a Tassadar, Kharazim, Brightwing, a secondary support that goes with this. Even Uther, I mean, your average supports, anyone works with it, but it's pretty common to see it with someone else that also fulfills a decent amount of damage, like Kharazim or Tassadar. But level 4, you can go for Protective Shield, or you can pick up yourself the Healing Totem. Now, Healing Totem, I'd say, on a map, let's say you're playing on Infernal Shrines, and there's going to be a lot of drawn-out battles over those Immortals. That's got a better chance to really get a lot of value out of the Healing Ward, so maybe you would opt to go for it in that instance. But say that you have a melee assassin on your team like Illidan, and he needs a little bit more burst sustain. You're going to want to lean towards Protective Shield, and generally for a rotation style where you're leaving lane to lane to lane on like Dragonshire, Protective Shield will end up being the better pick in these instances. Level 7, I like to go for a Lunar Blaze. Now, this is just a 50% increase on the range of that Lunar Flare, and it just allows you to do so many lockdowns, so many huge rotations with your team. If you have a Muradin, a Kael'thas, a Diablo, a number of heroes that are roaming between two lanes, going for those kills left and right, trying to get early game takedowns, this makes such a massive difference in getting those from a safe point. If you're moving a little bit closer to just get the normal Lunar Flare off, you might be putting yourself a little bit out of position, but at the same time, it's so hard to run away from a Tyrande that has that much range on a stun. It's actually the longest cast stun for a normal ability in the game, if I'm not mistaken. Level 10, we're putting Shadowstalk here. This is, again, very hybrid. It's about rotations. It gives you the element of surprise with that cloak, but it also gives your team the heals in those team fights. Level 13 is when she starts to get those big heals. Overflowing Light, as long as you have 50% or more of your health, it increases all of your healing by 35%. So her heals get pretty beefy at this point. And then this is when you go for a bit more burst. Shooting Star makes your Lunar Flare do an additional 50% damage and will also refund the mana cost. So this is really the hybrid. This is the most common build. If you're solo queuing as Tyrande, the build on the left, that is the build that you want to go for. And then at level 20, you get Rewind. That just means you've got double the stuns, you've got double the heals, and double the owls. Double the owls is really fun for hunting Abathurs. If you have an idea of where Abathur is, you can shoot an owl, do rewind, and shoot it again. But generally, you'll want to do more of an owl build if that's your goal. And we'll get to that a bit in our third build here on the list. Looking at the middle build, this is something that I've really only ever seen K1 Pro of Cloud9 bust out. And I actually spent my whole morning scrambling, trying to find a replay file for this. I messaged him. I messaged people from Gold League. I'm just like, please, I would love to, break down this replay and show it to you guys. But there are VODs available on Caldor TV. That's his YouTube channel, where he basically just restreams the Chinese broadcast. He doesn't even have the replay files. I mean, I don't know why it's so impossible to find them. But anyways, it's a really cool style where it's almost like an auto attack assassin. It makes Tyrande a completely different hero. So level 1, you just bust out Ranger's Mark. And this is, again, just the reduced cooldown on Hunter's Mark. At level 4, you go for Searing Arrows. And Searing Arrows, it's 50% additional attack damage for 5 seconds. So sure, you spend more mana for your basic attacks. That's fine. But they're way more powerful. And then if you're marking the target for 4 seconds, you're amplified for 5 seconds. Suddenly they're taking a lot of damage, and she becomes a pretty crazy burst hero. When it comes to level 7, you're still going to stick to focus attack Lunar Blaze, because Lunar Blaze is just so good for getting those long range lockdowns, and it's just great utility you can't pass up. Level 10, she needs a bit of sustainability for the team. Shadowstalk in general is just a great talent. As good as Starfall would work if you're going for a full assassin build, if you think that your team has enough heals and you want to go for Starfall, by all means go for it. But Shadowstalk is great for the element of surprise, and it's great for the sustain in these battles, and it makes her almost impossible to defeat in a 1v1 battle. And it's only a 50-second cooldown, so it's kind of hard to pass up. Level 13, you're looking at Huntress Fury. 40% additional attack speed during the duration of Hunter's Mark. So now you're giving yourself that 50% damage, you're giving yourself 40% attack speed, and the target is taking 25% additional damage. Like, that is disgusting amounts of burst with this style of build. Then you just throw on an additional 15% attack damage permanently with Hunter's Mark at level 16. And level 20 is actually, this one is kind of up in the air based on your preference. Now, Hunter's Swiftness it's probably the most fun, because using Shadowstalk, you get 40% additional movement speed. So now, not only are you doing ridiculous amounts of damage, you have crazy attack speed, but you're moving 40% faster for 8 seconds. Like, it's so fun. Like, it is super. If you have never done this build, you need to do it. I'll probably do it after the show today because of how fun it is. But at the same time, Nexus Frenzy is 20% attack speed and 20% range. So throwing that into the mix is also really fun. Now, suddenly you can attack from further away. You're way more powerful. It feels like once you throw those two abilities, you hit one and you hit D on your target, they just evaporate. So it really comes down to preference, but I think both are really great options here for this auto attack style build. And again, all props to K1 Pro, who, as far as I know, has invented this style of play. The last build is really a focus on being a true support, but at the same time, you're like the ultimate ranger. It's like the most ranged you can be in the entire game. So at level 1, you go for Empower. Empower is an ability that makes it so that every time your Sentinel, the Owl, the Hedwig, whatever you want to call it, hits a target, it reduces the cooldown of all of your abilities, including your Heroic, by 2 seconds. Now, you're saying, 2 seconds, whatever, that's not a big deal. But then you grab Pierce at level 4. And Pierce means that it can pierce through that target and hit multiple targets. So if you manage to hit all 5 of the enemy team, it's hard to do, that's 10-second cooldown reduction on all of your abilities. Now, looking at her abilities, let's just swap back to the game. 8 seconds here on Light of a Loon. 18 seconds on Sentinel. So if you can remove 10 seconds off an 18-second cooldown, that's pretty good. And then it's 12 seconds here for Lunar Flare and 50 seconds to have Shadowstalk, and then 100 seconds on Starfall. So sending out Sentinels becomes quite impactful. But let's make it even more intense for cooldown reduction. You pick up Battle Momentum at level 7, and this is a half a second cooldown reduction every time you auto attack. So suddenly, your cooldowns become negligible. You have all of these things that reduce your cooldown. You shoot out Sentinels, you hit 2 to 3 targets, that's 6 seconds gone. You Battle Momentum, just clearing a wave of minions, and you're just reducing all of your cooldowns by so much. And before you know it, you're launching out Owls left and right. And not only is it giving you tons of vision in the game, not only is it doing a fair amount of damage to the enemy team, but it's allowing you to cast a lot of abilities. And in particular, this is giving you the ability to cast Light of a Loon quite frequently. And when you have Overflowing Light at level 13, I mean, it's 35% more effective. So, that really does add up quickly. And paired with Shadowstalk, so this is probably like the most support style Tyrande in the game that you could possibly play. And it's also really quite fun. Now, like any other build, all of these things are pretty interchangeable except for this last one. You really do need to go for those level 1, 4, and 7 talents to make this build work out. If you're going for the full heal style, you probably should stick to Shadow Stalk. You kind of have to go for Overflowing Light. At level 16, you could go for True Shot Aura if you really wanted to, but why would you pass up Ranger at level 16 when you already picked up 2 talents for your Owl? Ranger, not only does it increase the width of the Sentinel by 100%, so it's easier to hit more targets, but it also increases the damage by 200%, well, a maximum of 200%, based on how far the Owl travels. So if you're shooting 2 arrows out, left and right, it's gonna hurt a lot. And if you want to kind of go full on overkill, now I listed Storm Shield here at level 20, but if you really want to go overkill, you can pick up Rewind at level 16 because that is an instant 2 owls, and then if you hit both of them, it's pretty much going to reduce your cooldown so much that you can shoot a 3rd owl out, which is hilariously fun, especially if you'd like to go Abathur hunting, which I love doing if I'm ever facing an Abathur on the ladder. But in the end, really, these are 3 of the staples for Tyrande, and I advise all of you guys try all 3 of these because they have hugely different play styles. And it just feels way, way, way too fun. And just her kit in general, like a talentless Tyrande is still incredibly fun in the way that she, interacts, the way she roams, the way she can burst down a hero, paired with a hero like Diablo or something of that sort for the lockdown. She's really just a great hero. We're going to take a look at a replay where it's Tyrande on Dragonshire with a team that actually excels in lockdown. And this is that first style that we looked at, the stun rotation build. This is by far the most common build used not only on the ladder, but used in competitive. And, it's definitely the one worth looking at the most. If you're first time Tyrande player, this is really what you should look at. I'd say it's a good basis just for how to play Tyrande as a core and really the most effective style in a lot of instances. So let's hop on into this game. Let's get that sound on. Ooh, get some music in here. Nice. And let's take a look at these compositions. So on the red team, that's our team with Tyrande, we have Diablo, Muradin, Tyrande. 3 heroes that have great stuns. With them, Tassadar and Raynor. Now, we mentioned that Tyrande isn't necessarily the best solo support in the game. That's why we have Tassadar here. And Tassadar is likely going to go a very damage-oriented style. Tassadar is a hard enough hero to kill on his own. He's got a lot of sustain on his own, but the shield with a 5-second cooldown and a 5-second duration, he can keep that shield flowing left and right for his allies. On top of that, Muradin has a lot of self-sustain, Diablo has a lot of self-sustain, and his trait is an automatic res, and Raynor has a lot of self-sustain. So everything, let me turn this audio down a bit, everything about this composition is just shouting, like, we don't really need those big heals, we just need a team that can generally stay alive, and then we have enough heals to go with that. Their opponents, honestly, this composition that they're running would work against almost any style of play, but they do have some pretty big targets. Zagara, if she doesn't have vision, if she doesn't see the rotation coming, she is a huge target, incredibly easy to lock down and kill. Tyrael, Uther, they're going to be a little bit harder, but Kael'thas and Vala also pretty squishy targets that are rather easy to kill. All right, now that we've taken a look at the breakdown of the compositions, let's take a look at the talents. Now, level 1, Tyrande, like we mentioned, is going for Ranger's Mark. That's just the 8-second cooldown, so now her Hunter's Mark is a 12-second cooldown. And there is the combo. Executed in perfect fashion. Let's just look at that again. And this is a classic combo. We used to see this done with Stitches back in the day, but it's become really common to see Diablo do this style with Tyrande. And let's just, I think I rewinded far enough. Watch Diablo, watch him here. He's just gonna look for the kill. Tyrande goes in the bush, rotate up, they get vision on Tyrael, but then they're gonna rotate back down to the bottom lane. I think I rewinded it. Yes, I did. Okay, here they go. Back to the bottom lane. Eyes on Vala. Tyrande immediately knows what is expected of her. She sees that Diablo is within close range of Vala, and this is their prime target. And just watch this. Shadow charge happens. Tyrande in position. She stops, And right as he starts the flip, he doesn't wait till after she's flipped. It's happening at the same time. You have to just kind of predict and respect that your Diablo will do the flip almost immediately after the shadow charge, and she lines this lunar flare up directly behind where they're standing. So we saw that Vala was right here. Diablo then flips her directly behind him, and that's exactly where the lunar flare goes. Raynor gets his Q, he moves on forward, and this target just gets shredded. You saw the Hunter's Mark go down, that little red arrow over the head, and then Diablo moved over to body block. All of these little things are just crucial to getting these kills, and Vala had nothing she could do. She just died. There was nothing she could have done differently. She was out of position. Diablo was close enough. Tyrande was in position for the lunar flare, and it's lights out. It's as simple as that. And that's just one of the really powerful things. She's a support hero that can just paired with other heroes, can just evaporate their opponents. Okay, so we're gonna see this continue. Again, lunar flare. This time it missed, but you can see the threat. Uther has to go back. They rotate with Kyriel, trying to get the plays. But it's a good attempt. You're applying this pressure. The enemy team has to constantly think, if we see Diablo, Tyrande is going to be with them. Now, this is something your opponents can abuse. They realize that these two might be rotating together. And a lot of the times, you're going to see teams opt to leave their tankiest heroes, their safest heroes alone in a lane. But that's why Zagara is playing so passively in the bottom. Now, Raynor did get ganked. They actually... That's the right response out of the red team right now, the right team. They realized that Tyrande Diablo were likely going top, which means that's 3 members top, 1 member mid, and 1 member bottom. So they used Uther and Tyrael to rotate down to the bottom lane, I'll swap the vision here, and they had Kael'thas here. They rotated 4 members down to the bottom lane, where Raynor was all alone, and then Raynor he had no chance whatsoever. So that's one great counterplay to facing something like Tyrande Diablo, Tyrande Muradin, whatever it might be. We call that Miranda, Tyrande Muradin. It's their little hybrid name. But let's go back to Tyrande's vision and just watch from Kirsten's perspective in this case. So realizing his mana's low, he's just going to tap that well, get some nice mango flowing in his veins. And right now they do have to respond to both of those towers. Now Sentinel revealing the rotation of 3 members from that bottom lane. They know they need to be careful. You see the rotation up, a lot of damage being applied to Diablo. And Tyrande doesn't have the most heals in the world. I mean, you're already seeing that to be a bit of a struggle. So he has to tap the well. Her heal has a long enough cooldown so she can't just spam it. And she doesn't want to waste all of her mana on that note either. But Diablo, it's all about getting those kills. He's got enough health in the tank right now. The globes will make a huge difference in keeping him alive. And he's just waiting to find that one target step out of line so that he can flip. Tyrande can line up the lunar flare and they'll get the kill. The good side is when they saw the rotation of everyone from the bottom lane go mid, when they attempted to grab the Dragon Knight, Raynor was able to recapture the bottom lane. And there's the use of Sentinel once again, revealing they're going for this Merc Camp. So Diablo in the front line, the flip, the Lunar Flare connects, Tyrael taking way too much damage, the beautiful shot from Raynor, and that is a kill. Now the Druid's Might must have been on cooldown. He would have used it for sure there. He must have used it to get over the wall and help them fight those giants, which is a huge misplay. But in turn, the Sentinel revealing their location, the pressure from this team, they were able to get a kill and steal a camp. Already, another part of Tyrande's camp giving this team a huge advantage at this point, now starting to creep away and head of experience, and this is a situation where they can really pressure those shrines. Now, Tyrael is back alive, but he's not going to be directly in position. They just finally cleaned up the giants in the bottom lane, and we can see Tyrande and Diablo just lurking here in the top. Now, Zagara has a lot of creep spread on the right. That's why they're not going into that right bush. Mainly because of the creep spread, but also because there could be another member there. They don't really exactly know if there's a tumor in the bush because they haven't gone up there themselves, but that is very likely the case in this instance. And now that they've recaptured that top shrine for the red team, Dragon it won't be possible, so it's going to be time for them to go back and look for more kills. Let's actually just kind of speed things up a little bit. We're going to plus the speed by 1, watch them wiggle around up into this top lane. Oh, Diablo just trying to make sure the creep doesn't get out of hand. Some roaches flying from space, and there is an awful ambush. Diablo getting ahead of himself, but oh my goodness, the Tassadar shields, the double support, the Light of the Loon coming through from Tyrande, and Diablo walks away from a 4-man ambush. 4-man bush? Sounds weird. Yeah, that's That's the power of double support. Now, I'm actually quite surprised that he got away, but a big part of that is the fact that Uther is the only person that has a stun on their team other than Kael'thas. I don't think I saw Gravity Lapse land. He must have been not present for that fight. Ooh, close once again to getting a dragon, but now the rotation happening. Light of the Loon used. Kael'thas misses his Gravity Lapse. And Tyrande able to live as a result. Now, if Gravity Lapse hit, Tyrande was dead. And one thing to point out there is Tyrande, this is one of her weaknesses. Tyrande doesn't actually have the best lane clear. And there are a few supports that have decent lane clear, like Brightwing has Arcane Flare, and that's pretty good. Malfurion can pick up Moonburn at level 1. That's great for clearing lanes. And Tyrande really doesn't have good lane clear. You're not going to Hunter's Mark a minion. And if you do end up spending Lunar Flare, that is a long cooldown. That is a 12-second cooldown. She shot that at the minions to try to push the lane back. And then immediately as she sent it out, we saw the enemy team come from this bottom bush right here to try to ambush her. If she had Lunar Flare, she probably would have been okay in that situation. Now, she was okay ultimately because the Gravity Lapse missed, but if it was cast properly and hit the target, then she would have been dead for sure. So just something to always think about when you're playing Tyrande and having to clear those waves of minions. Is it worth casting Lunar Flare to get the wave clear right now? Am I safe? And it's just one of those Tyrande problems. All right, so some good stall. That's just another huge strength for Tyrande. I could actually harp on that for a little while. Lunar Blaze at level 7, 50% increased range on Lunar Flare. Sentinel, her owl, global cast range. So on any map where there's an objective you have to channel, which is quite a few maps. In fact, the Dragonite here on Dragonshire, Cursed Hollow for the tributes, Towers of Doom for the altars. There's a lot of different tributes in the game. She is so unfathomably good at stalling out channels. And she used to be picked for a certain style of compositions where people would go for the increased range on static charge in this case, but the increased range in Tassadar, they would get that to try to stall them out. Tyrande would shoot Sentinels out to stall out the captures of these channels. Just another great power to this hero and another asset they have. They were able to buy enough time, recapture this bottom shrine, and then continue on their jolly way. Now, the experience is still very even in this game, but against Sentinel just scouting out the bottom giants, trying to get eyes on the enemy team, but Raynor and Muradin in the bottom lane are being ambushed right now. They're going to be okay. Tyrande's not even worried because Zagara steps a little bit too far forward. Boom! Lights out for her. Diablo with the plays, the shadow charge, and that grants them level 10. Now, level 10, this is going to change the playing field a little bit. Tyrande has now grabbed Shadowstalk. And Shadowstalk gives you not only a big heal for the team, but it also gives you the element of surprise to some extent. You can ambush the enemy team. Sure, they can see the shimmer, but it still, removes you from the minimap and gives you say there's creep spread, and the enemy team is going to utilize that creep spread to see you on the minimap and find you and run away in those situations. But now that's no longer an option if they use Shadowstalk as an ambush. Another thing to point out here, though, we have Archon. Now, Tassadar in general, when we see him played nowadays, you usually see Force Wall. Force Wall is one of the best initiations in the game. It just locks out paths for retreat. It just completely gives you the edge and allows you to take team fights in a favorable manner most of the time on a very short cooldown. But this team has double support, technically, right? They're both kind of the hybrid supports in the game. And by busting out Archon in this instance, you really help fill that gap of we don't have any real damage dealers. We have Diablo, who's a bruiser, who's going Lightning Breath. We have Raynor, who is our only actual assassin in this composition. And then Tyrande has Hunter's Mark and, Lunar Flare, but overall, she's going a very hybrid build. So by grabbing Archon here, it helps supplement their damage and is really going to help out quite greatly in the long run. But now that we have the level 10 heroics, let us continue. Bottom lane being charged. Lunar Flare a little bit shy of Tyrael, just placed a moment behind, a little bit too far behind him. Just shows how hard it can be to hit at times, especially when you're rotating quickly down through a lane. But their pressure was enough. The level 10 talent threat too much for the red team to contest. And we're going to see our blue team grab the first dragon of the game. Now you'll notice the structures really haven't taken any damage at all because they've been putting their focus on trying to get enemy team kills. They've only succeeded in getting 3 kills in general, but they've successfully controlled the lanes well enough and grabbed enough of the mercenaries, even that one offensive camp that we saw. to just make this fine. Now that they finally have a dragon, they're getting that pressure on. Note that they went for the 2 middle towers, quickly rotated up to the top lane, and then they get the 2 top towers. These towers give 400 XP a pop, and they're way easier, way safer to grab than to try to pressure a fort where you're way more likely to just end up losing the Dragon Knight. Now, Lunar Flare, once again, not quite hitting. We can actually rewind it now. We're gonna go back to the start of this fight. Now that all settled, the dust has settled. All right, normal speed activated. We're gonna go back to Tyrande's vision and see what she's looking at. Now, she's hiding in the back, just keeping her eyes on the enemy team. Make sure to keep a nice, safe distance, and the Lunar Flare does end up missing in the chaos. But Lightning Breath in the afterfact doing a ton of damage. A beautiful Sanctification to stall that out, and then Maw just connecting on Diablo, but now they're on full-on retreat. Lunar Flare does connect on Uther. That should be a kill. Diablo did use Shadow Charge already, so that's the end of their aggression, but their dragon took out 4 towers, and in the aftermath of the team fight, they managed to pick up 2 kills, even after missing that first Lunar Flare from Tyrande. So, although we didn't see Shadowstalk used as like an aggressive thing, in the team fight itself, not using it to try to rotate with the stealth, not using it to try to get those ganks, it's still a big heal for the whole team, and it really helps sustain the team well. Tassadar cannot heal, he can only shield. Tyrande can heal, but her heals are quite negligible until level 13, so ultimately, I mean, it does make a massive difference in the team's overall sustain. But speaking of level 13, we're getting really close here for the blue team. They are just inches away, actually capturing this bruiser camp on the top left corner. Should be enough. There it is, not even needing the whole camp. They grab that 1 minion. And there it is. Level 13 talents are going to be picked up. We can talk briefly about Muradin's talents. Even though this is a Tyrande video, Reverberation, he's going to full Thunderclap build, but Third Strike, or Thunder Strike, excuse me, is one of the cooler ones. This makes Muradin one of the best 1v1 heroes in the game. 300% damage from this. You've got Thunderburn and you've got Reverberation. So if he ever gets faced off 1v1 against like a Zagara or a Vala, he is going to just brutalize them. And it's interesting because Muradin is looked at as a true warrior and not a bruiser. But with this style of build, in a 1v1 scenario, he becomes a bit more of a bruiser, and it makes him quite scary. So this is just another thing that we're seeing, another trend in this entire composition of they have all of these half-role heroes. Bruiser, kind of a bruiser with this build. Support assassin, support utility assassin, and then straight assassin that has a lot of self-sustain. He didn't even go for Give Me More because of how powerful a Rainer can get between rotating for Seasoned Marksman. Like if you rotate between lanes, I mean, he's sitting at 18 bonus damage to Seasoned Marksman, which isn't anything like extraordinary, but it certainly does make a difference. As the game gets longer, he gets stronger and stronger. But let's get back into this game, back to Tyrande's vision, and see what they're going to do next. So they do have the 13 talent tier advantage, and when you do have a level 13 advantage, you have most of your heroics available. Shadowstalk is up, you've got Lightning Breath, and you've got Battle Cruiser. It should be enough to like say, hey, we could get really aggressive and try to invade the Merc camps. But the Sentinel didn't really reveal anything for them, so they're not going to put that pressure on. They're just going to do the safe plays, grab these mercenary camps, clean up these giants here in the bottom lane. We see the red team is positioned in the top lane right now. They do have eyes on 3 or 4 members, and they're just opting to push. This is incredibly smart. They don't have to go look for a team fight if they know the position of their enemy team. They just cleaned up a mercenary camp. They have a mercenary camp to escort of their own. Get the maximum value out of these giants. Take out a fort in this situation. It is the greatest thing you can do. Now, you could say, well, couldn't the red team just put the pressure on the top lane? They're not in the same kind of position yet. Their mercenary camp isn't anywhere near as close. The lane isn't pushed out, and they now have to respond to defend their bottom lane. So look at the posture right now. They forced the retreat. They grabbed this top shrine, and they forced the enemy team to retreat because they just powered through this fort like it was nothing. They have giants pushing with them. They're both still at full health right back here. And this wall with a battlecruiser flying over it, the Hyperion, is doing tons and tons and tons of damage. So the enemy team has no choice. They have to retreat. Now, the one good thing for them is they do have this bruiser camp, these knights that are marching down this top lane, but they're in a bit of a tough position. All right, getting back into it. Here's what's happening. They're just posturing safely. They're protecting their giants. They're not overextending too much. Gravity Lapse was used. Tyrael dives in. Sanctification has been spent. And this is Tyrande's moment. Let's go to her vision and see what she can do. Everything's on cooldown. Shadow Stalk has been used. They don't have a whole lot of health or sustain left, but somehow no one has died. Diablo in the front line does end up falling. Tyrande is getting quite low herself. She's going to go down, and Muradin goes down. So they overstayed their welcome. It was a strong push. They did a fair amount of damage to this back wall. They got, it's 1,300 experience. It's more than a fort from these two towers, and they weren't able to really do a whole lot other than the battle, the Hyperion chip there. But their top lane took almost no damage. Diablo's here, recapturing the shrine, so the enemy team cannot grab a Dragonite. He will get it just before Vala is able to channel that. Now he has this top lane. He can push back these knights, and their allies will be up before we know it. Tassadar, Raynor, Diablo, soaking all three lanes respectively. They have to forfeit control of what is likely this bottom camp. Yep, the red team is in fact here at this bottom camp. But in the end of the day, they didn't really lose anything. They're about to have level 16 over level 15, which means a talent tier advantage, and they can look to continue their aggression in this game. Now, since level 16 isn't here, Raynor didn't necessarily get blocked by Holy Ground, but there was definitely enough pressure from the team. So he was a bit too far forward there. Sanctification used way too preemptively. Now Diablo with that lightning breath just shredding their team. Muradin dwarf tossing on in, and Tyrande, where is she? She's going to look for those lunar kills. Now, Shooting Star, Lunar Blaze, super long range. We saw it go off right there onto Tyrael, who was able to use that little Druid Smite to escape. They've now conceded their position on these shrines. Bottom shrine held by our blue team. Top shrine is available. Zagar is going to try to get a bit of a fortification up here. Just vision here with the creep tumors push out this lane, but she has to suspect that she's going to be, oppressed here in the top lane very soon. Okay. Tyrande, just kind of hanging out mid lane. Just waiting to see if anyone rotates. Constantly just utilizing her presence between these two lanes because of the way she works with a rotation. She can help save a hero, or she can help kill an enemy between the heals, and then the lockdown from Lunar Flare. There it is. So much damage, and then the knockback. This is another piece to this composition that makes them really powerful in the late game. Now that we're at level 16, Raynor has picked up Bullseye. That's a 1.5 second stun. But if you're the Raynor in this situation, you need to be very careful to save the Bullseye until after the Lunar Flare, because in the instance that you use it before the Lunar Flare hits and the Lunar Flare has been cast, you will knock the target out of Lunar Flare's range. On the flip side, if you want to do it the other way around, if Raynor hits the Bullseye first, you need to be hesitant for the Lunar Flare to be used that afterwards, as the Raynor will, or the target of Raynor will be pushed forward. So it's a bit of a tricky exchange, but it's so much stun time. I mean, we're talking the full second here from Lunar Flare, and then 1.5 seconds from Bullseye, which knocks them back as well. And then we got Stormbolt, Shadow Charge, Flip. I mean, all of these stuns. It's crazy strong for rotations here in the late game. And Tyrael's dead. Woohoo! 40 seconds for his angelic death. It's going to clean up this wave, and Diablo is looking to take this top shrine. Tyrande, hanging out here by the middle. Dragonshire, Shriner. That doesn't make any sense. And they're going to get it. We see Atomic is going to channel that. I mean, that multi-shot, sure, it's going to buy some time. But there is no chance of contesting this in a 4v5 situation. It is way too risky. So you just have to concede the Dragonite in this situation and allow them to grab it. Now, Atomic driving the Dragon in this situation. Bottom fort is the only fort down. We saw them pressure that keep a bit earlier, but they're looking for the experience here from the mid keep. Level 20 is what they want. So getting as much experience from the structures that you can is the absolute right decision. Now, they could go to the top lane, but traveling to the top lane is actually, in Dragonshire in general, it's kind of a riskier lane behind like the fort and the whole top bridge. So they're just opting to go for these towers again. Remember, 650 experience per tower. That's 1,300, and that's going to really push you far forward. So they've now have more than a level lead. Hyperion, once again, going to apply some nice damage to these structures. And here's something that we should mention. If you have heroes standing within the circle of the battlecruiser, they will actually be the priority target for Hyperion. So if you leave one or two heroes, preferably someone with a higher health pool, to soak up damage, you can protect your structures. Like they almost lost the Slight Wall. But in this scenario, they're opting to try to put some pressure on their opponents. They want to fight. It looks like Raynor just shot out a penetrating round. Looks like Holy Ground is here. So the fight will disengage. but they could have soaked up maybe 1 to 2 shots if they hung their team in that circle a little bit longer. But they're more worried in this scenario about denying this Dragonite this tasty fort here in the top lane. Now the Dragon has expired. The fort is rather low. Regardless, Lunar Flare just a moment too late, unfortunately. But with Shadowstalk being cast there and Muradin casting pretty much all of his cooldowns to stay alive, they have a fair amount of sustainability. They need to help Muradin here, though. They realize that is the case, so they're trying to rotate back in. Muradin, super, super low, will die to the Living Bomb, but Lightning Breath is buying the time they need. Sanctification only being used on Tyrael himself here in the top, and the Maw saved at the last moment. Blue team might have overstepped their bounds. They don't really have any support left. They've now lost both of their warriors. They just need to full on retreat. Trading out Nikin is a nice play, but with the Night Camp being taken, Lambi needs to back on out of this one. All right, so red team staying strong. They're staying alive in this game. Our Tyrande has proved pretty well, but missed a few Lunar Flares at this point. Nothing terrible. And she can't really contest this. I mean, she's checking out. They're going for this camp, just shooting a Sentinel for good measure. Say, hey, I'm here. Try to fight me. But nope, Atomic's going to disconnect. Nice weather by you. There must have been a long pause. Okay. They're just... No one even responded. Rainer wanted to know what the weather was like, and they just say thanks. Oh, they just didn't even respond. So BM. These guys are so intense. This is, in fact, a tournament VOD from Enter the Storm EU. Okay, let's back up. I was not ready for that one. Excellent. Slow things down to normal speed. Here we are in the glorious bottom lane. Ooh, my camera's bugged out. What? It's like stuck on whenever I move my mouse, the whole camera jiggles. Well, this is a new bug. We experienced something new today, team. Maybe I can lock it on Tyrande's perspective. Nope, I'm just gonna have to observe the rest of the game. Oh well, that's fun. All right, well, Rainer got blown up quite decisively there, and a lot of that's due to the power of Tyrael at level 16 with Holy Ground. You throw Eldruin's Smite down, you teleport to the target, and it creates a big, impassable circle by your enemy team. And with that, they were able to really just zone Tyrael into a pocket in which they, you know, made quick work of him. Now the red team has that hero advantage for another 40 seconds. Zagara is low mid lane, but they're just going to grab this bottom Merc camp and capture that for themselves. I'm actually baffled by this. I don't longer have a mouse cursor. I've never seen this bug in my life. Well, live and learn, team. So, Tyrande just kind of hanging out with her best friend Diablo. They are a match made in heaven, or hell, and they're going to look for those Shadow Charge flips into Lunar Flare. That is pretty much like the best combo they have available for the team right now, and if you get a kill at this point in the game, it's nearly a full minute death timer. So Zagara, that big juicy target, gets the Divine Shield. Now the combo was executed perfectly, but Divine Shield to stall it out. Now Heroic was spent for basic abilities being spent, and that is a win in every right. Lightning Flame being used here with the Hellstorm at level 20, forcing them away, allowing Tyrande to capture this bottom shrine. Rainer making his way to the top lane, where he would like to capture that shrine, but they need to be careful because the red team could easily rotate up there themselves. You'll notice my observing has gotten much worse now that I actually have to do it all the time, but that's okay. And I can't click the minimap. That is such a challenge. Oh, Rainer grabbing this shrine. Red team opted to not go up there. They didn't want to contest the position on the enemy team, and they had Tyrael here in the bottom. Oh, dragging the mouse. We're dragging the mouse all over this mouse pad. There we go, mid lane. And Uther and Vala cleaning this up. Blue team rotating as 5. They realize they need to capture this bottom shrine, and it looks like it's going to end up being a battle. No one in the top lane. We do have the top shrine being controlled by the blue team, so this is very much in their favor. If they win the fight, they get a dragon, and they probably win. Flip, Lunar Flare, but no, bolt of the storm used by Zagara. Diablo too far forward, but we saw the Storm Shield and the Shadow Stalk both being used to keep him alive. The like pseudo support that we have from Tyrande, that level 20 talent of Storm Shield clutching through that fight. And it worked out. It's almost like when you throw Shadowstalk and Storm Shield together, it's almost like having Tranquility from Malfurion. It's kind of like the same kind of effect. You get a lot of heal, and you get a lot of sustain over a short period of time. 8 seconds is not that short. But it made such a huge difference for the team fight. Like, Diablo went from being nearly dead to being A-okay. Sure, he has to back up, get some health from this mid-well, which is somehow still standing at the 19-minute mark when we're at level 20. But that just kind of goes to say, like, how well the offense has been on the blue team because they haven't really had to play defense at all since they've always been on the aggression. Diablo once again looking for the kills. He actually shadow charges onto Uther. Sanctification has been spent, and Archon in the backline looking for that fat deeps. Now, the thing about Archon is it struggles if he can't get to the target. He has to use Dimensional Warp aggressively to try to get in there. Holy Ground actually forced him into a weird spot. Lunar Flare on 2 targets. They pick up the first kill on Tyraande, who's going to try to explode, just hitting Tyrande, not really doing much. Hellstorm just shy of getting the kills. Shoot a Sentinel. Do it. Do it. Oh, I wanted a Sentinel to come out so bad. I can't even re-click on Tyrande. What button is she? Is she 3? Can I do that? 4. Yeah. Team, I figured out the hotkeys. And now we have Tyrande vision back. You blinked while stunned on my screen, KT. D8. Oh, that's like a upside down frowny face. He's upset. Hacker. Let us review the replay. Okay, gotta rewind till the start of the fight, I think, where Kael'thas used Bolt. Way further back. We're gonna get down to this. We're gonna solve this mystery. A little bit further. And this should be good. All right, let's watch Kael'thas vision, actually. Kael'thas would be 9. And then we're on Nick and vision now. Sounds like naked vision to me. All right, I think this is it right now. That should be the stun coming out of Lampy. He was the one complaining about him being a hacker, quote unquote. This is the stun right here. Let us watch. Huh. So Raynor, I can't hover over the talent right now. It's a 1.5 second stun for his level 16 talent, Bullseye. And it only activates the stun onto the first target it hits. But it looked like Nicken actually bolted during the travel, like while he was being moved. So I'm curious if the stun doesn't actually activate until you've reached the end of the knockback. That's a very interesting interaction that I've never really noticed before, but that might actually be the case. It's either a bug or the stun doesn't become a thing until the end of it. So let's watch it again here. Here's a stun, and I don't think he reached the end of it. That was either like the sickest bolt of Nicken's life or a very strange bug that we just discovered here today on the Daily Quest. Either way, we did already see this fight, so we're not going to watch it again. We'll just la-di-da-di-da, boom, bam, boom, fire, lightning, explosions. It's like a Michael Bay film. Great! And everyone will part ways. So going back to our Tyrande cam, we're going to see that they have pushed the enemy team back into their base, and they're just going to opt to go for a combination of the shrines and the mercenary camps. Mercenary camps force the hand of the enemy team to respond to them, buying you time on the map to do what you like, but they also can give you that opportunity to maybe go for a shrine. So they have the bottom shrine, they have the giants in the bottom lane, which will provide a bit of a presence that's needed to respond to, and Vala able to slip away in that instance. So a good play there. That was actually just, let's watch that once again. This is the power of cleanse. And I believe that was Uther just throwing down a flawless cleanse in that instance when the rotation happened from our blue team. So Tyrande, we're going to see Diablo on the right side, and then Tyrande here on the left. Insta-cleanse. Insta-cleanse gets Vala, who would have been dead for sure there. Very well done by our Uther player. So that's the power of cleanse against this style of play. Another great rotation to these type of heroes that just do way too much lockdown on your team in these scenarios and almost just force you to pick cleanse for your team. But the threat was enough to force them back away from that top shrine. They control the bottom shrine, and they can look to grab yet another Dragonite. Now, the red team hasn't grabbed a single Dragonite yet. It's all been the blue team this game. So it's going to be 3 dragons in a row. They've got a weak keep in the bottom lane. Tyrande, low on mana, actually going to be leaving. Now, since the game is late enough, we have 1 minute and 20 seconds on this dragon, and they're just waiting. They're saying, you know what? We could make this a death push. Let's not push at half health. Let's save our dragon until we're at full power. So Tyrande went back to base. She retapped her mana tank to make that nice and full. And they're now marching as 5 with the dragon ready to go in a full minute remaining. That is a long time in Heroes of the Storm. So just lightly poking, throwing out the lightning breath or the dragon breath at the top tower. They take out the well, and here they are on the keep. Generally, you don't want to soak the shots as the dragon. It slows your attack speed. So it's just well done by keeping the dragon from being slowed by this keep here in the mid lane. Now it's starting to get slowed since the minions and other heroes have backed away from it, but the keep will go down either way. Phoenix to try to apply some light damage. Mid keep has fallen, bottom keep is low. Dragon backs on up here, looking to clear this wave to escort these minions forward to soak up some of those shots initially, and then they're looking for this keep. Now the blue team, they're not looking for kills. You've noticed they've switched gears. They've switched gears in this moment where they're not sitting there waiting for Diablo to get that shadow charge. Diablo is just fully peeling. He's not looking for kills. If someone overextends, sure, he would flip into them and shadow charge them, but he's looking to just keep his back line alive and keep people away. Muradin and Diablo just full on peel mode in this situation, and it's all about getting the maximum damage done by the Dragon Knight. This is the exact way you want to utilize objectives like the Dragon Knight and Plant Terror. And there it is. I mean, the two keeps down like nothing. Lunar Flare kind of used a little early there. Shadow Charge flip will get the combo, forcing out the Sanctification on Tyrael. And Vala will be the first one to fall here. Now, Diablo actually Aldruin's might back in. That Hellstorm doing ridiculous damage to the punt. Not actually going off, and now that's a Tassadar that's just popped out of the case. Lunar Flare whiffs again, but with one hero down, a very full health team that just used Shadow Stalk, that just took out Tyrande. Pretty sure that's going to be lights out, and game will go to our blue team. I mean, I just got to hand it to the way they approach this game in general. The Tyrande play was excellent. We saw the power of Sentinel used to reveal the enemy team and take advantage of their potential rotations or the mercenary camps they're going for. We saw the combo used with Diablo several times, and just the sustain of Tassin or Tyrande as both kind of hybrid heroes when it comes to being supports and assassin. And that is just the power of Tyrande. So to recap things, we can look at the builds once again. We just watched the stun rotation build that I mapped out here with Storm Shield swapped out for the rewind. Now, Storm Shield, of course, did had a huge impact on the sustain of the team. If you were running something like Kharazim or Brightwing instead of Tassadar, they have a bit more sustain, you would probably end up going for rewind, just because double Lunar Flare, double Owl, quite good. You know what? In the future, I will definitely do videos on the other builds. I wanted to do a few replays today, to be honest with you, but I wasn't able to track down the appropriate replays for these builds. I don't want just like myself playing these builds. I want an actual top-level player that can really show you the perfect way to execute this style of play. So I will hunt those replays down and set that on my list for upcoming episodes. But this has been episode number 21 of the Daily Quest featuring Tyrande. Now, the Daily Quest is going to have many different styles and themes. Now, yesterday we did Nova, today we did Tyrande, but moving forward, it's going to break up and have very different style episodes. And ultimately, I hope to iron it out so that Monday is, say, a hero day. Tuesday, we look at drafts. Wednesday, we commentate a community-submitted replay. So that means that all of you, if you're playing matches and you want your games to be cast for feedback, I will commentate your games with criticism. I will give you feedback as to like what could have been done differently in terms of decision making, in terms of team fights, all of that kind of things, and all of the sorts. I will do more episodes on just maximizing your presence on a map, how to make decisions on mercenary camps, all of that kind of stuff in future episodes. So look forward to that, and be sure to hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. And if you don't watch it on Twitch, I know a lot of you guys are watching right now, but make sure to follow the channel here on Twitch as well. That concludes episode 21. I'll be streaming a little bit after this, after a very short break. I'll see you in a bit.